Today, I'm going to be talking to you guys about my thoughts and first impressions on the brand new Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro. That was definitely a mouthful. Pretty long name, and I think it's kind of fitting considering that the camera is still obnoxiously long. But anyway, we're gonna jump right into it. I'm gonna keep this kind of informal. Now, first up, we're gonna talk about the specs, and off the bat, the specs haven't changed too much from the Pocket 6K model. Off the bat, this camera is going to be using the same Super 35 sensor that's currently in the Pocket 6K model. Now, that may be a disappointment for some who wanted a full frame sensor, and personally, I don't see it as too big of a problem. A lot of people were expecting Blackmagic to integrate their 12K sensor. I was expecting it. I wasn't necessarily hoping for it, but I did think that that would happen, and unfortunately, I was wrong. But basically, we're going to be sticking with the Super 35 sensor from the Pocket 6K. We're also going to be sticking with the same EF mount from the 6K model, and that's a bit of a disappointment, at least for me. I was hoping for interchangeable lens mounts, and I'm sure that everyone who has Micro Four Thirds lenses, Sony E mount lenses, Nikon F, whatever the case, I'm sure that you guys were all hoping for interchangeable lens mounts, or at least the option to purchase different mount versions of this camera. Now, the camera still has 13 stops of dynamic range. Again, this may be a disappointment to some who wanted more, but in my opinion, I think this is okay. I feel like right now, where we're at with this sensor, with this camera at this price point, I feel like 13 stops of dynamic range is a bit of a sweet spot based on what we're paying for it. So next up, we have the dual native ISO, stays the same, 300, 3200, and this, means that the camera is still gonna have its exceptional low light performance for what it is. So next up, all the shooting resolutions stay the same. We still have 6K up to 60 FPS, and we have 2.8K up to 120 FPS. Now, one unfortunate part of this is that we will not be getting 4K Blackmagic RAW. That's something that I personally was really hoping for on the next model, was the ability to record 4K in Blackmagic RAW. So for those of you who do want to record 4K still, to take advantage of these smaller file sizes, and you don't want to record in 6K, you are unfortunately going to have to stick with the Pocket 4K model. Now, we're going to move on to the new features. The new Pocket 6K Pro is going to have Gen 5 color science, and all of the Pocket camera models, as well as the Ursa Pro, Mini Pro, will be getting the Gen 5 color science via a firmware update coming soon. Now, next up is the tilt screen. Now, the tilt screen is something that a lot of people were asking for. Personally, I wasn't too keen on it. I don't care. It's not the type of feature. It's not the way I use the camera. However, we are now getting a tilt screen, not a flip screen. Sorry, vloggers, but we're going to be getting a really nice tilt screen that is 1500 nits. Now, that is pretty bright for an on-camera monitor. There may be a little bit of a concern about battery life, but we're going to address that momentarily. Now, for comparison, something like the Adamus Shinobi, which is an external monitor, that comes in at 1000 nits. And personally, I see a 1500 nit on-camera monitor is really, really welcome, especially considering that the original Pocket camera came in at, I believe, 500 nits. So I just mentioned battery life. Well, battery life was a very, very big concern with previous Pocket cameras, and now Blackmagic has switched from the Canon LPE6 battery to a Sony NPF battery. Now, this is the Sony NPF 570 battery. It's one of these smaller ones. It's not one of the big honky ones like I have here on the back of the Zoom F6. So we're gonna be keeping the weight down. Those batteries don't weigh much more than a Canon LPE6. So that's gonna be a huge buff to this camera, considering that the battery life on the Pocket 4K and Pocket 6K were absolutely horrendous, no matter what anyone says. Pretty terrible. So now we're getting these Sony NPF batteries, which according to Blackmagic will double the battery life. Now, taking it a step further, Blackmagic has announced another battery grip. Now, this battery grip is $145 US, and it does use the same Sony NPF 570 batteries. And what's really cool about this is, unlike other battery grips, it does not take up the battery slot on the camera. It attaches to the camera like a standard battery grip would, screws on the bottom, but it also has connections on the camera, which are covered. You remove the cover and you simply attach the battery grip, and you have 3 batteries. So now you're gonna get up to 3 hours of battery life. So sounds like it's gonna be an hour per battery, which is pretty good considering what we're used to. So we've got the battery grip, we've got the new batteries for Sony NPF, and next up is a feature that I actually am pretty happy they added. It wasn't something I necessarily wanted or needed, but built-in IR-ND filters. We're gonna get up to 6 stops of ND, which is really nice. And these are not electronic NDs like the Zcam ND, END. What's really nice about this is we're gonna be getting 2, 4, and 6 stops of ND. And it's also gonna have the IR filter built in. So it's gonna eliminate the IR pollution, which was a huge problem with the previous generation cameras. So there we go, we have the built-in ND filters, which you could access via the little button on the back of the camera. And I believe Grant said that you could access it from the amazing UI on the screen of the camera. And I'm hoping that you can access it from the app. So next up is another feature that, in my opinion, no one seemed to ask for, at least that I've seen. I've been around the Blackmagic Pocket Camera Facebook groups and forums and Reddit groups and all that stuff for quite some time, but we're now getting a Pro Evf Electronic Viewfinder. Now this EVF comes in at $495, and that may seem like a lot at first, but you get a lot for your money with this. Now what this EVF does is it attaches to the top of the camera once you remove a little panel, little thing, and it plugs directly into the top of the camera, and it has a 70-degree swivel, so you just tilt it up and down, which is really cool. And it has a built-in proximity sensor like most EVFs, so when you put it up to your eye, it will essentially switch on to the EVF, which is a really nice feature. It has an OLED display with a 4-element glass diopter and has built-in status information, so you can see the information on the screen. So you can see your frame guides, you can see your recording modes, all that sort of stuff. I assume you're gonna see all the extra stuff, but specifically focus guides and all that stuff. You're gonna see a digital focus chart. It also includes 4 eye cups, so if you are left eye dominant or right eye dominant, you could switch the eye cups depending on how you use it. And overall, I think at $495, it's a pretty good accessory to add on if that's how you shoot. Personally, I never shoot like that. I never use an EVF unless I'm shooting stills. Again, not a stills camera though. But next up is the dual mini XLR ports. Now, for those of you who've used the Pocket 6K and Pocket 4K, you're used to the mini XLR jack. A lot of people wanted full-size XLR, and I did discuss the potential for that being some issues in a previous video, but I think having the dual mini XLRs is a really nice addition. Unfortunately, we didn't get the improved audio preamps like I was hoping for, and like I said, we didn't get the full-size XLR like a lot of people were asking for. So now we're gonna talk about the form factor, and if you guys have been following this channel and you've been in the Discord with me, you know that I really like the cube form factor or cube-like form factor cameras. The reason for that is it makes the cameras easier to rig, it makes it easier to put on a gimbal, it makes it easier for me to rig it inside of a car. Whatever it may be, I was really hoping for a more of a modular cube camera, something that we could add modules onto, something similar to the Confinity Mavo or even the Red Komodo, something like that. But unfortunately, we didn't get that. But what we did get is pretty much the same size, same width camera. Big disappointment there. And it is a bit taller. It comes in at 7 inches wide, just about, and 4.4 inches deep, a little bit deeper than the Pocket 6K, and 4.85 inches high. So this is a pretty beastly camera for what it is. It's still wide, and I think there's nothing pocket about this camera. It's a little interesting that Blackmagic has done this with these cameras. They've taken the name of the previous generation camera, which was a pocket camera. It fit in your pocket. Toss a little lens on it and you can go to town and bring it, you know, wherever you go. But unfortunately, they went with this wider design. And while I have, you know, used this camera extensively, in fact, I'm filming on the Pocket 4K right now and I love it, it's just not a ergonomically well-designed camera. It's just way too wide, it's hard to rig on a gimbal, and it's just a little bit of a disappointment, like I said, for them to stick with this form factor, and in fact, in my opinion, completely ignore all the things that everyone has said in the past about these cameras. Now, if you are using this camera on a gimbal, good luck. It's gonna be really hard, in my opinion, to balance on a smaller, cheaper gimbal. If you're using something like the Ronin RS2, you might be able to get away with it, or the bigger gimbals. Personally, I wouldn't bother with it when it comes to putting it on a gimbal. So unless you have already went and looked, the price for the Pocket 6K Pro is $2,500. I will be very honest with you, I am shocked that the camera is only $2,500. Now the reason I'm shocked is because when the Pocket 6K first came out, it too was $2,500, and they later reduced the price around last September, I believe it was, to $2,000. So for just $500 more, you're getting a pretty sizable upgrade. We're getting built-in NDs, we're getting the option for the EVF, which you have to purchase separately. We're getting the dual XLRs, and I think that is a really, really nice addition to the camera for just $500. So, you know, you could spend $500 on ND filters, high quality ND filters with IR built in pretty quickly. So I think that's a really nice addition, and I think the price point is very Blackmagic-esque. It's really, really good. One question that came to mind when I was watching a live stream was simply, who is this camera for? And after thinking about it a little bit and looking at the specs and just thinking about use cases a bit and determining how other people use their cameras, because I don't necessarily think how other people use their equipment, I think of how I use it. I'm sure it's the same for many of you. I personally think that the Pocket 6K Pro is a really, really good camera for a solo operator or someone who's in a run and gun situation. Unfortunately, that is not always me. Yeah, I film quite a bit solo. I do film run and gun when I'm filming racing events and stuff like that. But unfortunately for me, there are so many other aspects to the way that I work. So a good example of that would be that when I am filming car-to-car footage with the rig, I really can't see myself using this camera. In fact, I just feel like there are so many features on this camera that make zero sense whatsoever for that type of work. It is a bigger camera now, so now that removes the ability for me to rig it up inside of a car. And again, you have features that really make no sense for that type of work. I do a lot of gimbal work, and like I said earlier, this camera is probably going to be a pain in the neck for rigging on a gimbal. So that's my opinion on it. I think it's a really good camera for someone who's a solo operator. Let's say if you're filming weddings, you're filming a documentary, whatever it may be, it's a really good camera for that. I think it'd be a really good camera for churches, for anyone who's doing live stream work, you know, with churches or big events. And from the get-go on this camera, and realistically, from the start, all their cameras, they have completely ignored the people who use stabilizers, whether it's a gimbal, a Steadicam, whatever it may be. I feel like Blackmagic just completely said, those people don't exist. And that's a little bit concerning, considering that it's such a huge portion of the market. I feel like gimbals, as much as I really don't agree with it, more and more people use gimbals for entire projects. Wedding videographers, car videographers, whatever it is, gimbals are being used more and more and more, and I think that it's a little silly on Blackmagic's part not to create a camera that is a little bit more gimbal friendly. So that's something that is a bit of a concern when it comes to this camera. It got bigger, there's nothing pocket about it. So another thing that some people are going to be upset about is that Blackmagic did not add continuous autofocus. Yeah, you have the autofocus, we'll call it, which is just tap and focus, which really to me, I can name 2 times where I've used it. I've used it when filming right here. I've used the app to pull focus while I'm right here, but I could just as easily do that by doing my measurements and knowing my focus distance. So, you know, that's something that if you are going to add autofocus to a camera, I think you should do continuous autofocus. Blackmagic completely, ignore that. I know a lot of people wanted IBIS on this camera. I personally am very happy that IBIS was not added, and we can talk about that on the Discord channel. I'm not gonna talk about all the nuances and problems that IBIS brings to cameras. Basically, if you know, you know. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the Pocket 6K Pro is gonna be a really good camera, depending on who is using it. And if the Pocket 6K is any indication of how good this camera is gonna be, I personally think that Blackmagic has a winner here. They basically took the Pocket 6K and improved upon it. But a couple of things that I'm disappointed we didn't get was the function buttons. We didn't get more of them. You guys know, if you've watched any of my videos already, you know that I like customizable function buttons, and the more the merrier. So we didn't get that. Would have been nice to have some more customization. And again, the form factor, they went in the polar opposite of what I was hoping for, which was a more streamlined modular body. And I did want some updated recording media, and I understand why they didn't go with it. I was kind of hoping that they would go with CF Express. Personally, I do not like recording to external SSDs. I know Blackmagic is fine with it, but people have had problems, myself included. They did stick with CFast and SD, again, not CF Express. I think that's very important for them to stick with that, considering that this camera will pair with the Pocket 6K and 4K perfectly. So they're gonna stick with that, and I mentioned earlier, no improved built-in preamps, and there is no further integration with the video assist monitor from Blackmagic. I'm very disappointed in that, but I think that's okay considering that they added the tilt screen. Shouldn't be too big of a problem for this camera. I would have very much liked to see a firmware update for the Pocket 4K and Pocket 6K where it plays with that screen, their video assist, much better. So a few final thoughts here before I wrap it up. Now, the first thing that happened when I opened up Instagram after the live stream was I saw a bunch of DMs from people asking me, am I going to get the Pocket 6K Pro? And to be honest with you, I had my debit card ready to go. I was sitting there pretty much ready to order the camera, or a couple of them, depending on the price. And unfortunately, I did not order one, and I will not be ordering one. And the reason for that is that this camera does not meet my needs based on my personal workflow and what I film. It meets some of them, but not all. In fact, it meets less than more. But that doesn't mean I'm not gonna rent the camera and bring you guys a review. As always, any reviews I bring you guys are gonna be completely unbiased, unpaid for. No one's paying me for these reviews, and they're gonna be to the point, and I'm gonna tell you guys exactly what I think of it, just like I have in the past. So as soon as it becomes available for rent, I'm gonna be doing that and bringing you guys that review. Now, the last thing I'm gonna leave you guys with here is something that a member of my Discord community said. His name's Comper, and he said, I think, put it best. He said that if you approach the new Pocket 6K as a completely new camera, it's a pretty underwhelming camera. However, if you approach it as a simple upgrade to the existing Pocket 6K, then that camera becomes pretty impressive. Now, again, we need to go back and consider that the Pocket 6K a little more than a year ago was $2,500 and later reduced to $2,000. So for the same price that the original Pocket 6K was announced at, we're getting this new Pro version, which has the built-in IRNDs, up to 6 stops. We're gonna have the additional XLR inputs. We're gonna have the option to add the EVF, the increased battery life, the battery grip, all of that at just $500 more. So again, I think Blackmagic is catering to the value-based camera market, and I think this is a really good move on Blackmagic's part. It's not the camera for me, but it very well may be the camera for you. So guys, if you enjoyed this video and you found it entertaining, you found it informative, please do me a favor, hit that like button, share this video on social media, help it blow up, and bring a little bit more attention to Driven Films as a channel. Also, if it's your first time here, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon next to it so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Until next time, take care.